Okay, good Monday morning. Welcome to Architects of Change Lives, conversations with change makers who are moving humanity forward. And sit down because I really want you to hear from both of these change makers, because that's what they are. Kirby Dick and Amy Ziering are Oscar-nominated, prolific filmmakers, and they make really important films. And the one that they have just made, which I can't recommend enough, is called The Bleeding Edge. And if you're a woman, if you love a woman, no matter your age, you must watch this. It's on Netflix. It's totally worth your while. I watched it with my daughter. It enraged me. It fascinated me. It inspired me. And but mainly it enraged me. And so I wanted to talk to them, and I wanted you to be able to listen to them, because this is a huge public service, I think. It's a huge issue about the medical device industry in our nation, what we're putting into our bodies and what is making us sick and what has not been tested. And this is really, I think, first and foremost, a women's health film. And I know people will say, the medical device community, oh, well, we stand behind our products, but since this is my show, we don't have to get into any of that. And Amy, tell me why you wanted to make this, how it came about.
Well, we're always looking for issues that really aren't on the public's radar and need to be, and someone came to us and told us their story, and we were exceptionally moved, and we were also really puzzled, because we consider ourselves really well informed, and we had no idea how unregulated these products were, neither of us. So we were incredulous when the person told us their story. They were like, and so we said, this is crazy. We started doing research, found out everything they said was true, and even far worse and far more frequent, and so we decided to make a film.
And what's really interesting is that you really focus in, even though you talk about hip replacements in there, and the effect of this one doctor having a hip replacement and basically going mad.
Yep.
Which I thought was extraordinary.
Yeah.
So talk about that, but it's really a film also about birth control. So go ahead.
It's about all devices across the board.
Right, but you zero in a lot on that.
And just so everyone understands, devices mean anything from a stethoscope as a device, a tongue depressor, X-ray machines,
pacemakers,
CT scans. We happened in the film because of the amount of limited real estate. We looked at 5 different devices in depth, but it really is
and talk about the 5 you looked at in depth.
A systemic problem. And the reason Maria said that it's more a women's health issue is a lot of the devices we ended up focusing on happen to be devices that are particularly implanted or used by women, but it really is
for birth control,
for birth control, and for other things as well, for vaginal reconstruction. But it really is, and this is important, an across-the-board equal opportunity offender. Men are as at risk as women are, just because of the gender biases in the healthcare system. Women are greater at risk, but we can get into that. But so Kirby was going to talk about this one doctor we profiled.
This is a doctor from Alaska, an orthopedist, a very good orthopedist. He was putting hips into people. He completely trusted the medical device company that was giving him these hips. And then he had a problem with his hip, so he decided to put one himself. He did all the research, he put it in, and then about a year. At first, it was fine, and then about a year later, he started getting these symptoms, these cognitive symptoms, and vision symptoms, and it just progressively got worse and worse until he kind of almost lost it, and he had no idea why.
He did lose it, as you say. He did lose it. Yeah, he had dementia, he had cognitive problems. He started, as his wife said, writing on the wall, completely going crazy mentally.
Exactly.
And they tracked it too.
And they had no idea what was wrong. I mean, that's what's also important, is when you have things implanted in you, what our film shows, and which is important, the symptoms you have don't necessarily correlate to the location of the device. So he gets a hip implant. He's implanted them in a lot of patients, but they've been implanted in millions of people. And he starts having cognitive problems, so they're looking for answers everywhere else. They don't connect it to the hip, and then he finds that actually it's...
Well, it was Cobalt. It was the Cobalt in the hip implant itself that was a problem.
So if people are listening right now and they've had a hip replacement and they're like starting to freak, which, I started thinking of all the people I know who had hip replacements. What should they do?
Well, first of all, if they have any cognitive symptoms, then they should definitely get tested, without a doubt. They should have either a urine or a blood test to test the level of cobalt. But if they're at all concerned, they should have that test. I mean, there are limits below which you're probably completely fine. But it does affect, according to, what was interesting is he started doing this research that nobody else had done.
Yeah.
And he's in the sort of initial stages of it, but what he's finding is really very, very surprising. It seems like as many as 25% or more people are really significantly impacted by cobalt hips.
So you said take the test. What is the test?
Well, it's just a test. It's a urine test or a blood test. Those are two separate tests to determine the level of cobalt in your urine or your blood.
Because the metal leaches. Okay, so that's what's important to know. The metal, and also not all hip implants are made of cobalt. So you first have to figure out, is that, you call your doctor, say, what's it made of exactly? I really need to know. And if they don't know, have them write the manufacturer and figure it out. And then once you know that, then you test. And if it has cobalt in it, then you should test for your cobalt levels.
Because when they went in to operate on him, what they found was that it had all kind of spilled over.
Yeah, and it corroded the flesh around it is what happened with him. But so it's a real problem. And part of the problem with this whole thing is these hips were really never extensively tested in humans, right?
Right.
So there was no way people knew going in that there was a real problem with these hips. That's the problem. That's why we made the film.
Right.
Because we have an FDA who allows 98% of their medical devices to get on the market without requiring testing in humans first.
That was really surprising to me. They look at the process by which the FDA approves devices or doesn't, or how certain devices get approved under an old initiative, so to speak.
Exactly.
And
sort of a loophole.
A loophole, exactly. And so, but the story also of all the women coming together after having this device implanted. Talk a little bit about that. And their stories, which I thought one after another, like I had no reason to think my doctor didn't know better. I had no reason not to believe what I was being told. I had no reason. I didn't even think about it.
Well, none of us would think about it, right? If
you
or I go to the
doctor. No, that's what I was
thinking.
thinking.
That's the authority we trust, and we feel safe trusting. And why shouldn't we? Being grown up believing that doctor killed all the medical programs. The doctor's the hero, the protagonist. And I must say, doctors aren't the villains in our film. They really aren't. Doctors are as unaware as the general public about this.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, obviously a doctor's profiled in our film. He put the very hip that made him ill into other patients. So that's how unaware everyone is of the system. And as Kirby said, 98% of products are put in patients without ever being clinically tested in humans. That means all of us are walking guinea pigs and no one knows this. So what you're talking about is we track the story of a lot of women who had used the eSure birth control device, which came highly sold to them and highly recommended as fast, effective, no side effects. More than birth control, it's like a permanent sterilization.
Right.
Again, one woman after another started having problems, but the problems again weren't necessarily correlative to, their uterus. They were having twitching,
bleeding,
autoimmune, chronic bleeding. And basically they started just trading notes online. Thank God for online, and saying, hey, I have this device, is anyone? And lo and behold, this was tens of thousands started pouring in. Oh my God, me too. Oh my God, me too. And then they tracked it to the device. They started complaining. They got no traction. And our film documented their efforts to sort of make the FDA aware of it, make the manufacturer aware of it, and make other women mostly aware of it, and just say, just stay away from this.
And it's actually now taken off the market due to your film?
Well, it just happened to be taken off. Yes, it just happened to be taken off the market
because
1 week before it premiered on Netflix.
Right, so. The company stood behind it, then the film was about to premiere.
It premiered at Tribeca, huge critical acclaim, huge reviews, huge public outcry, and then right before it started streaming on Netflix, they make an announcement they're taking the product off the market. So I think
after many, many years of selling it and standing behind it. Yeah.
So what has happened to all these women that you chronicle in the film? And they're really, kind of everyday women, and how this one product and then going to doctor after doctor, getting no traction, as you said, being told it was in your mind. One woman being told it was because she was Latina. One woman, you know, which, I mean, that you're basically crazy. That story after story of these devices ruining people's lives, ruining their sex lives.
You raise a really good point, if I can say, is that not only is this issue a device issue, but it also is a misogyny issue, in that women are chronically much more higher to rate disbelieved by their caregivers, just across the board. Not because of, again, the caregiver's fault, just because of our culture's fault, because of the way that patriarchal culture has framed women as myth makers or liars or to be distrusted. It's bizarre. So we just also, the sad thing is we heard that over and over and over again, that women would go to their doctor and say things and they just simply weren't heard or listened to or believed.
It's another version really of Me Too, because when they're putting up their stories, everybody's like, me too, and really also not being believed. Their health concerns not being taken seriously, thinking like, well, why would I be getting headaches if I'm having a birth control device put in, or if I'm having vaginal reconstruction? Those stories were
horrific.
Horrific.
But that's what's so incredible, is that they had to take their health into their own hands, and they had to sort of create this army using social media. They got all these women together, more than 30,000 women, almost 40,000 women now.
Wow.
And as an army, started going up against Bayer, started going up against the FDA, and actually got the FDA to start doing things. Not enough, but start. Otherwise, the FDA would have done nothing in this situation.
And we're hoping that this, you know, I met you through, we made a film called The Invisible War.
Right, exactly.
And that was in 2012, and I know you saw it, and we started corresponding.
And The Hunting Ground.
And The Hunting Ground. And both of those dealt with the epidemic of rape. And the first one was on military, the second was on campuses. And now here we are in 2018, and there's a Me Too movement, which I think our films helped to inaugurate, because we had people going on record for the first time and talking about rape candidly, and the public listened. And we're hoping, the reason I'm raising that is that, since you said Me Too, I hope that in 10 years there'll be a Me Too medical, right? Or we don't even have to wait that long. Right now.
Right.
You know, where we sort of start reversing this and have caregivers listen and believe women, because that would be, again, another radical, necessary, transformative revolution.
So there are so many people that I talk to who go to doctors and they just can't come up with, they're like, I don't know what's wrong. It's in your head. Maybe you're making it up. It's stress. Go home, rest, relax. And in all the work that I do in the Alzheimer's and cognitive space, everybody's told that by their doctor, like, there's nothing wrong with you and stuff like that. So if there are people out there listening, what do they do if they feel their symptoms aren't being taken seriously? If they feel like they know there's something wrong, but they have never even thought to track it to a birth control device or a hip or a pacemaker?
Well, first and foremost, the most important thing is trust your instincts. Like, you know your body. Don't go, oh, he said it must be nothing, or she said, you know, don't believe that. If you know something's wrong, and then just keep being your own best advocate and fighting for that. I mean, that's the one thing across the board. If we can transform our own mindsets and just say, and then, you know, obviously seek second, third, fourth opinions, and then do your own research.
Go online, you know, Google your symptoms, and start, if there are problems with this, they'll start popping up in most cases. Do the research. Research your own medical condition the same way you research a new computer or a new car.
And also to think about, like, as you were saying, with the doctor from Alaska, a hip, never even connecting the hip to cognitive issues, right? And go ahead.
I mean, one of the most remarkable stories was, like, a week after the film started streaming on Netflix, we get a letter in our inbox from a woman who says, I'm at the Mayo Clinic. My mother, who's 56 years old, 4 months ago went deaf and blind. We've been to every doctor in town. We're currently at the Mayo Clinic because we had no idea what could conceivably be wrong with her. I put your movie on because I work at a device company, not because... I don't know if I was supposed to say that.
That's okay. You can say anything.
Not because, you know, I was told I had to watch this.
Right.
She goes, halfway through, she started crying. She says, my mom had a hip implant a year ago, and I started Googling, can Cobalt cause? And yes, at certain levels, it can cause sudden deafness and blindness. Can you imagine? She's like, thank you for making this film. We had no idea. We're going to get her levels tested. They had her levels tested, and I think normal is 0.04, and she had or 0.4, and she had 27 in her bloodstream.
So I think this is so important, and I was asking Amy ahead of time about that I hadn't seen that much really on the film, and where was all this publicity that I thought this film warranted. And so there's a lot of maybe pushback from very powerful companies that don't want you to see this film, but I really want you to see this film, because if you care about your health, if you care about your parents' health, if you're ever going to have a device, and most of us will end up, right?
Yeah.
We will end up, and we will take that doctor's opinion, because they will give us all these studies, they will tell us how there are no problems with it. I saw myself in these women or that doctor.
Yeah, we've all been there.
We've all been there. And to understand that, and I thought it was really great to have the former head of the FDA talking about this process, and also these women who online started to reach out and really have changed other people's futures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is so inspiring. That's the inspiring part. There's, as I said initially, there's a lot to enrage you and scare you, but there's a lot to inspire you, because these women really have changed the future for so many other women who aren't going to end up in this, and so many lost their husbands.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been huge. And right now, if things are bad, 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, we're going to have many, many more devices implanted in us. So even if you're young,
the phones are going to be, right? This is sort of going to be antiquated. It'll be a chip, right?
Yeah.
Everything, even technology, right? It's going to
talk about the surgery, the robotic surgery, which also was terrifying to me. About, I had never even heard about how many doctors are doing surgery with kind of robots, and they haven't had experience.
Yeah. So the Da Vinci robot is put out by Intuitive Surgical. It's used through all different kinds of surgeries. And in some cases, it's better, but in many, many cases, it's not better. But the real problem that we focused on in our film is the training.
Right.
Is it takes 100, 200, 300 surgeries to really become proficient at it. And the problem is that these surgeons are going out after doing 2, 5, or 10 proctored surgeries, and going out and then operating on their own and putting patients at risk. And so there's, for every surgeon who gets good, he or she has put 100, 200, 300 patients at risk. And nobody really knows that. So in this case, you ask what you should do. The first thing you should ask is, if you're going to have an operation with a Da Vinci robot, make sure that surgeon has done several hundred operations first.
So it's really, you're saying to people, be empowered yourself.
You have to be. You have to be. It's hard. It's hard when you're dealing with a doctor, because the doctor knows so much, right? But you have to do this, and you should bring someone with you. You should never go into these important discussions alone, because you're the one who's ill. You have hope that your doctor's telling you the right thing, but you need an advocate there with you, because this is this may be the most major decision you do in your life. So do it right.
So there are a couple of things, kind of just summarizing here a little bit. Watch the film, right? Be your own best advocate, right? So if you're feeling something and it's cognitive, try to make connections. Maybe other things were put in, correct? Write down your symptoms. Look to see if there are other people online who might be experiencing the same thing. So even if it's a knee, a hip, pacemaker, and you're having trouble with vision, there might be a connection. So many people live alone. They don't have an advocate. People also have jobs, right? And to get one woman in the film, she had to go to so many doctors, she couldn't even keep a job.
No, it's hard, but it's really important. I mean, we sort of assume that our doctors are doing the best for us, and they're, in most cases they're really trying to. But the problem here is the doctors aren't trained. It's not even taught how medical devices are regulated. That's not even taught in medical school. So these doctors don't even know that these devices haven't been tested when they're putting them in. They assume they've been tested in humans. So you've got to, as you said, be your own best advocate and absolutely bring somebody else in.
And the other thing I thought in the film, it talks about how we really haven't, to that point, kept up with the technology is changing so fast that doctors aren't able to keep up with the technology.
And just no one realizes how deregulated these products are. I mean, that's the big dirty secret, right? That they've been completely. It's a $500 billion industry globally. I mean, that's super powerful, and they've just taken out all the fangs of anything that impedes their ability to make money. I mean, that's it. Bottom line. So what's driving this is profits. It's not patient safety, and that has to be just really heard over and over again. And we don't want to be alarmists. Obviously, there's amazing things that devices do and save us daily, but just buyer beware. I mean, they're not as rigorously tested. New is not always better. And just be careful when you engage with these devices.
Right. I think Amy makes a great point. Is if something's new, it not only has it very likely not been tested, but it hasn't stood the test of time. It hasn't been in people 5, 10, 15 years, and you haven't been able to hear about the problem. So something that's brand new can be actually much riskier. So when your doctor says, "Well, I have something, the greatest, latest, newest thing," you should stop at that point, and you should really ask hard questions.
That's why I want to amplify what you said about robots and what you asked about robots. Robots were marketed. It's a marketing. It's really just a marketing. What's the word?
Platform device.
Yeah, I mean,
marketing.
There's no need for robots. Surgeons were doing just fine, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But they can charge more for a robot. They can tell you it's fancier and newer and better. I mean, I had one expert say there's only 2 surgeries that maybe, like jury's even out, are improved by a robot doing it. But they can charge more, they can market it more, they can say, look, a robot's doing it, it's going to be even better, safer, cleaner. And studies that they've done have not shown any of that to be true. So again, and my fear with robots is, what if the electricity goes out? What if you have generations of doctors that don't know what to do when a bomb goes off, and you got to just do a surgery right there, like old school. I want a surgeon, who could do it the old way, who knows how to Also, robots, you can't. There's stuff that surgeons have told me. It's tactile. You have to understand things. You have to see how things are processing. You don't get the same vision with a robot. So there's all sorts of problems with it. And what just makes me sad about it is, they're just making more money off of it because people think, oh, it's sexier. I gotta try that. I gotta,
What's happened to the women who came together to get Assure off the market? Where are they today? Where are they right now?
Oh, they're jubilant that it's off the market, and they're now helping other groups that are trying to get other devices. And they also have an organization, because there's still a lot of work to be done, so we should say that.
What is the organization?
It's called ASHES.
Well, ASHES, but if they go to medicaldeviceproblems.com, I believe that is their website.
What is it? medicaldeviceproblems.com.
And that is where, if you have a problem, you can write into that, and there are resources on that page that can direct you to addressing some of the problems that you're having.
But they also would, if you're inspired, they would love support, and they need it to help other women that have been hurt by this device, to help other groups that are trying to sort of figure out how to go up against manufacturers. So it's called ASHES, I believe.
Well, that's their organization behind it, yeah.
So have they been able to put their lives back together from the film, or?
Yes and no. I mean, it's, these are lifelong problems now because of, these implants. That's,
the mesh.
The mesh, in their case, Assure. Yeah, they're going to be living it for the rest of their life. I mean, they're fighters. They're helping humanity, but it's not. They're still having problems.
Yeah.
So I think once again the film is the bleeding edge. Great to watch with your kids. Great to watch with your neighbors. Really powerful film about what you need to know as technology becomes a bigger part of all of our lives and such a huge part of our healthcare. To ask questions, to bring in advocates, and I guess first and foremost to assume you're not crazy.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. And so it's a great film to invite people over, Sunday dinner, watch it together, ask questions. And as I say, if you have a parent who might be exhibiting some symptoms, think about what may have been implanted in them. And those 2 websites, medicaldeviceproblems.com.
Medicaldeviceproblems.com.
Yeah,
right.
And then these women who really, in partnership with you guys, got Assure off the market. It's a great public service what they did. They took their pain and turned it into purpose.
Yes.
Which is all really the hallmark of all of your films, where people kind of speak up, whether it's about sexual assault in the military, sexual assault on college campuses. If you haven't watched those films. They're also really inspiring. Once again, I think
And relevant now more than ever. I mean, if you are curious about Kavanaugh, watch The Hunting Ground. I mean, it's
and you're working on another film, a new film.
Yeah, we're working on a whole project now. As a result of the Me Too movement, a lot of funders came to us and said, please start documenting what's going on in Hollywood and what's going on in tech and what's going on in a lot of different industries. So we're doing sort of a large-scale project looking at assault, harassment, parity, and equity in a bunch of different powerful industries.
So if they have stories about that or interest in that, how do they get in touch with you?
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's in primarily in the entertainment business.
Right,
Actually.
But, yeah.
So
but,
where could they get in touch with you?
What's the best way?
All right, get it.
Write
Well,
assistant@chaincamera.com. Write to our assistant @chaincamera.com. Chain, CHAIN, camera.com. Any stories, we'd be very interested in hearing.
do you think documentaries really foster change, create change, or having impact?
Oh, well, indubitably, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I saw a movie in 6th grade by accident. They weren't supposed to show it to us. It was called Say Goodbye, and it was horrific. It was about the seals being bludgeoned.
Yeah.
Okay, an animal rights act. I mean, it completely changed. Who knew? Like, I didn't know as a kid, and it really changed the way I related to animals, thought about my responsibility to animals. So, and that, was long before we had impact campaigns like we have now with films. So I'm saying yes, absolutely. If messages didn't work, I mean, there'd be no advertising industry, So films are extremely powerful. Narrative films too. I mean, if I had a different clone, I would be really on the forefront of making a lot better narrative films that are moving the culture forward in a much more humane and way than the way we are doing now. But anyways, we've also seen with our films, I mean, Invisible War, 35
Right.
pieces of legislation were passed. We got it to Secretary of Defense Panetta. He changed military policy 2 days after viewing it, credits the film in his book. Jill LeBrand took it up and wrote legislation based on it. Hunting Ground, similarly, and then Lady Gaga singing at the Oscars, the theme song, I think, might have ignited Hollywood, right? I mean, that was the first time Hollywood saw survivors on stage. It got a standing ovation when she sang that song. Brie Larson's crying and Kate Winslet's crying, and I mean, I think Hollywood started thinking, gee, if these kids are standing up speaking, maybe we should too, So I do think films, and I also think those films going out there and not getting blowback, I mean, I think that CNN and PBS, which played those films, maybe empowered the New York Times and the New Yorker to finally publish stories that have been around for 20 years.
And in both of those films, if you haven't seen them, please check them out. Young, everyday women stepped forward. They weren't famous, and they told their stories. They told them bravely, truthfully, and they created tremendous change. And so in this film as well, regular people stepping forward, telling their health stories, so that others of us who watch it can really perhaps avoid what happened to them. So that's what's so inspiring to me. And congratulations to you both. The Bleeding Edge, it's on Netflix. Do a neighborhood party, do a family viewing, do a company-wide viewing. And I'm sure if you're in the medical device business, you've seen it. But if you haven't, check it out. Thank you, guys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for joining us.